So in Diablo 2 Resurrected, everybody knows about Runewords. They're great super early on, whether you're making yourself something like a stealth armor. A little bit later on, you can make yourself a spirit sword, spirit shield, so incredibly powerful for the cost. Or late game with the high runes, you can make incredibly powerful stuff like a call to arms, heart of the oak, or an enigma. But making Runewords is pretty much all you can do with runes in Diablo 2.
What were you
That's right, folks. Some of the absolute best uses for runes are not those type of items. Let's go over what those exactly are right now. So it wouldn't be possible for me to literally go over every single one that there is. There's just too many, but I'm gonna hit the highlights, the absolute best of the best uses of runes in Diablo 2 Resurrected that is not putting them in those incredibly powerful rune words that everybody loves to use. So feel free to let me know down in the comments any of them you think I should have went over or anything you think I overlooked. Now the first one we're going to look at is actually just plugging the tier rune into a particular item that you have. You see it gives 2 to mana after every single kill. Now that sounds like absolutely nothing, but this is going to be used for super early on in the game. Now let's say you're using something like a charge bolt. You see right next to me here, it only costs 3 mana. So super early on, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, whatever, in normal difficulty right after you start the game, man, 2 to mana after every kill could actually really add up. Early on, you're not going to get a 3-socketed helm, but we have 2-socketed helms you can just go ahead and buy from Charcy, and if you find 2 of these tier runes from the Act 1 Countess, you could easily get 4 to mana after each kill into a gemmed cap. So you're kind of only making your own rune word right here, getting 4 to mana. So the first one was for the casters, but hey, let's do one for the melee characters. So how are you going to get a ton of damage early on? You don't even need to necessarily make a rune word. The actual Tal rune has 75 damage.
Wow.
It is poison damage over time, but not having the actual AoE, you're plugging some of these, maybe even 3 of them, into a gemmed flail. If you're Act 2, Act 3 of normal difficulty, you're dealing 226 damage over 5 seconds. That is huge early on, just huge. The great thing about this too is you can attack one monster, you get them poisoned, then you hit another, then you hit another, and then you hit another. A lot of times lacking AoE on a lot of different melee characters. This way, you can just hit each one time and deal over 200 damage while you're just continually attacking another monster, another one, as they just melt away for you. Next up is probably one that you can use early on, but this is more of once you start marching into Chaos Sanctuary, or maybe you're marching into Act 5, or maybe even Nightmare or Hell difficulty on a playthrough. When you get higher into the game, resistances are going to be crucial because you get the drastic penalty for going into Nightmare and into Hell difficulty. Well, Fire Res and Lightning Res are kind of the 2 most important. The other one's obviously important as well, but man, you can get melted by fire damage in this game. Well, how can you make it up? You find yourself a socketed helm along the way, and you make a rune word to get a bunch of fire res? You might not be able to, or you can't. What you can do is just plug in any runes you want to make up any resistances you want. I even went ahead and did this on a more recent playthrough. For whatever reason, I was finding a ton of stuff that had a bunch of lightning and a bunch of cold. My poison was kind of looking fine, but I couldn't find anything with fire res. But what I did find was some Ral runes. So I actually plugged 3 Ral runes into a helm, just as what we're looking for right here. And your fire res is going to be looking mega primo after you get 90 to fire res by making this Ral rune word. And of course, you don't want to sleep on, you could always mix and match. Let's say you need to make up the poison res. Here we got 60 off those Tal runes, and hey, maybe you want to then throw in a Ral to make up 30 on the fire res. Mix and match to whatever suits your purpose. Next up is a specialty of my own. I've actually never heard anyone else talk about this little tip right here, so make sure you take note up in your brain. And this is a way that I keep my mercenary alive early on. A lot of people can struggle with this. You'll have an alright weapon for your Act 2 mercenary, you probably got an insight, maybe you make a bulwark up on the helm, but then you need to make up some other stuff to keep your mercenary alive, and usually they're lacking, maybe not having the resistances capped out. Well, there's going to be a couple of easy ways here. It's utilizing these runes individually, and kind of not in the purview of this video, but hey, another little tip I'll throw in here is try to look for some of these set items if you get lucky, or just finding a plain socketed armor that you can stick stuff in. But if you find something like a Griswold's Heart, you got 3 open sockets, you got a bunch of strength, which can help you put on an insight if you don't have the strength to go ahead and wear it, or it technically strength does help out in other ways. Or something even better, Natalia's Shadow. It actually has a bunch of poison res on it already, and a life based on character level. Now this does roll 1 to 3 sockets instead of Grizz always having 3 open sockets, but this one is absolutely spectacular. It's already got the poison res and poison length reduced, so if you go ahead and stick on something like a Ral for 30 fire res, a Thul for 30 cold res, and an Ort for 30 lightning res, that gives it 25 to all res with the 75 poison length reduced. And depending on the level, we'll just say you're probably around 70 or 80. You have 70 or 80 life to your mercenary too, with over 700 defense. This is a spectacular one if you get lucky and find one early on. But if you don't, you could always plug it into this if you find it, or you can always find an armor around. Maybe you only find a 3-socket armor. Maybe you find a 4-socketed one, but you can make up all those different resistances, plug it in an Ort, plug it in a Thal, plug it in a Tal rune, and I actually don't have another Ral rune, but hey, maybe you need to make up more poison, or you stick that Ral rune in. You have a 30 all res armor with, depending on your base, you could have a ton of defense as well. And that will go ahead and, in some instances, completely cap out at that point your mercenary's resistances, keeping him alive. And hopefully you can make up the other crucial points you need on your mercenary from the helmet or from the weapon. And this you can kind of throw on before you find that Lem rune to go ahead and make the rune word Treachery, or even later a Fortitude. So we'll now move into some later game stuff, and this one is a little bit more specific. It's kind of for one particular build. That gold find bar, we got a 6 open crystal sword right here, 6 open socket, could be a phase blade, depends on how you're using it. Perhaps this is for some gold find sorceress, you want the lower strength requirement, but you plug in a lem, and then you go ahead and get off the beaten path. You use another lem, and then another one, and then another, and then another, and then another. Oh my word. 450% extra gold from monsters for a 6-lemmed sword right here. So this is if you're strictly going to be one of those gold find characters, getting a ton of extra gold find. Now I'll show you a few individual uses, but this could be across a lot of different items, but I'm just using these ones as the example for this. Now, a lot of people know you throw a topaz and a harlequin's crest up here, you go ahead and get 24 to magic find right there. You see 24% better chance of getting magic items. Now, maybe some people might think, hey, I want some extra magic find on my Oculus, so let's get a little extra on there. We got 50, now it has 50. But we did get a little extra lightning damage on the attack. Yeah, you're right, folks. That's not what you're going to want to do. You just ruined it. What you're going to want to do is grab an Ist rune and stick this in whatever weapon you want to go ahead and get better magic find on. This is one of my premier, my favorite piece to go ahead and use on a sorceress, and that is the Ist at Oculus. Because right here you got 50 magic find already, along with all the other good stuff that helps out the sorceress. Stick an Ist rune in there, and we got up to 80 magic find right there. And it is absolutely a goated item. I know a lot of people can't stand that chance to teleport when struck.
I took it and threw it on the ground.
I don't mind it personally, and with all that magic find and everything else on it, I go with this almost all the time on a sorceress. Now, other specific uses for individual runes going into an item that really helps out your character. Maybe you want to have cannot be frozen on a melee character, and a lot of people will throw on Ravenfrost, but on a barbarian, you don't want the bodies to shatter because you can't go ahead and use find item if the bodies shatter and melt away. So what you can go ahead and do is grab yourself a Cham rune. I know, hard to find, not super expensive to trade for online though, because it's not used in a ton of Runewords. So if you want to go ahead and use the Ariat's Face on your character, or maybe one of the other ones perhaps, who knows, go ahead and stick yourself a Cham rune in that way you get cannot be frozen. It does free up the ring slot, so you don't have to use cannot be frozen there. You don't have to wear the Trang's belt to get cannot be frozen, or one of the other few options it is to go ahead and get cannot be frozen, but you got it up here on your helmet now. Now we'll do a couple more of them together here where you stick individual runes into items. Perhaps you go ahead and find yourself something like a Herald of Zakarum, and it's already got a lot of res on it, but you want even more. Now you go ahead and stick an rune in it, and in a shield you get 22 to all resistance, so that bumps it up from the 50 all the way up to 72. So this way on a paladin, this is why it's so easy to cap out resistances. You go ahead and get a ton from the base. You can plug even more in with that rune. So there's a great option to go plug it in to the Herald of Zakarum. Now hopping over, let's say you get lucky enough to find yourself an ethereal ribcracker, or maybe there's some other unique or perhaps even rare item that rolls ethereal and you want to keep it so it doesn't break and it boosts up the damage a huge amount. But what you can go ahead and do, tough to find if you play on single player. I play on single player a ton, so I get it. Or if you do all solo self-found, but kind of cheap to trade for because once again, not using a ton of rune words. That's the Zod rune. It only does one thing no matter what you put it in. That cannot be destroyed, indestructible. So we go ahead and plug that into the ethereal ribcracker. Now it does a crazy amount of damage, and you never have to worry about that sucker breaking for you. Perhaps you don't want to plug a Zod in. Maybe you want to attack as fast as you can. So we got a ribcracker right here, and we want to go ahead and boost up that increased attack speed. It's already at 50, but getting even higher. Maybe we're getting you over a breakpoint or something like that. Grab yourself a Shale rune. So right here, make sure you only plug it into weapons though, because you notice you get faster hit recovery and faster block rate, which if you want those things, go ahead and use it for that in the armor, helm, and shield, whichever one you need to use. But specifically putting it into weapons, increase attack speed, and it's one of the best ways to actually boost your damage per second. If you get more attacks off, you obviously are going to deal more damage. Maybe crushing blow will happen more often, and bam, you deal more damage in those large chunks that way. More deadly strike hits, you get the picture. Probably the most common, and I would say most common, probably by far, use of an individual rune that you go ahead and plug into an item is in the Andarl's Visage. Now, a lot of people maybe overlook if you're kind of newer, but the fire res, actually, that's not 32 fire res, that's minus 30 from fire res. So what this does to you is it really hurts you for that particular one. And usually this is used on actually an Act 2 mercenary. You don't want him getting melted down all the time. So what you go ahead and do is, conveniently enough, a rail rune actually has 30 to fire res, just completely negating that negative and just completely gets rid of it. Of course, if you get really crazy, insanely lucky, or you're super rich, you can find a jewel that has a bunch of fire res, perhaps even up to 30, along with other things on it to help out too. But super clean and easy, just get that rail rune, stick it in a Darl's Visage, and that help your mercenary survive way better. And then, of course, there are Herodric cube recipes. Now, this isn't going to be a list of all of them. I'll put a link at the top of the description to kind of a link of way more Herodric cube recipes that you go ahead and use. But the first one is one I highly recommend people try at the beginning of ladder. It's really hard to get that really elite base with a lot of damage for your insight, because a lot of times you might find something like, oh man, it's an ethereal thresher, but there's no sockets in it, and if I Larzik it, it's going to get 5. But what you can do is kind of roll the dice, do this Herodric cube recipe. It gives a random number of sockets to go into the thresher, so it rolls randomly between 1 and 6, so you have a 1 in 6 chance of getting 4 open sockets. And if you do, on the first day or 2 or 3 of ladder, you can be incredibly ladder wealthy, or you can get that extra great base for your insight. Unfortunately, I got the 5 open sockets. Maybe you can make an obedience in it or something, or just chuck it on the ground. But hey, you got a chance there of getting something great. Next up is a great one for the casters. I do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these a year, and that is making crafted caster amulets. This is the stuff you need, or like I said, check the link to see all the stuff right there. But you go ahead and craft it up, and you get yourself a FCR amulet with some other stuff that rolls on it. And if you're high level, you can go ahead and get skills on it too. 2 to sorceress. You can get a bunch of strength and a ton of stuff to make it incredibly valuable. And there are way more crafted stuff that you can go ahead and make. There's blood items, safety items. Other popular ones to make are things like blood gloves and blood amulets, and even blood rings. Those, of course, are going to be for different types of melee characters. So you can feel free to look through that entire list and see if any of those could possibly help you out. But this is the most common one to make. This one didn't roll particularly good, but they can be crazy godly, like maybe this example or some other ones that you might have seen around. And another incredibly common thing to do is go ahead and actually upgrading uniques. Now, the skin of the Viper Magi right here is a serpent skin armor, but maybe we want a lot more defense on it. We can go ahead and upgrade it to the elite version of this exceptional item. This particular way on an armor takes these particular things right here, a Lemiko and a perfect diamond. Go ahead and cube that, and now it's a Wormhide, going from 270 to 970 defense. It's kind of a lot. Some other incredibly common uses for this. Skin of the Viper Magi is used a ton, so this one's pretty common, but upgrading a gold wrap so you can get extra rows of potions in that belt or any other unique belts that way. But you can also upgrade unique items nowadays too. Maybe something like the Death Sash you want to upgrade for the same instance as the gold wrap to get extra rows of potions. Now you can do this with a ton of different unique items too, weapons and shields and stuff like that. So feel free to look at some of those and decide if you want to upgrade them. But do remember the strength requirements and stuff go up when you do this. So make sure you don't upgrade things right out of the ability for you to use it. Huge thanks to the channel supporters, the channel members. If you want to consider supporting the channel, makes it possible for me to keep making videos and streaming here on this channel, consider clicking the join button down below the video. I couldn't do all this like I do without your support. Peace out and keep slaying.